Well, hello again. My name is Kathy Talley, and I'm going to be the moderator for this session. Please use the Q&A or the chat feature in Zoom to send in questions using the chat. And Chris will address them throughout the session. And Chris, since you don't have a co-presenter, I'll be watching the chat for you as well. I'll try not to interrupt, but if they're pertinent questions, and people might raise their hand, but once Chris starts sharing the screen, it's going to be hard for him to do both. Actually, I'm sure he's quite good at multitasking based on what I know about you. And then we'll have Q&A time at the end if time allows. Also, just again, a reminder to complete the surveys at the end of the session. Chris wants your feedback, and to tell you that this session will end promptly at 11:50. I will try not to interrupt, but I will give Chris a 10-minute warning to wrap up and allow time for questions. If we're still engaged at 11:50 a.m. Eastern time, the session will not turn into a pumpkin, but we will be kicked out of the golden carriage. So please don't be offended if all of a sudden the session disappears, someone else is going to take control. So we'll want to be sure and finish up in time. So I'd like to welcome Chris. And thank you all again so much for joining us. Chris is an instructional designer for NC Virtual. Chris also serves as a digital accessibility specialist and moderator for the AECT Accessibility Committee and for the QMR site. Welcome, Chris. We look forward to your presentation.
All right, thank you, Kathy. And please feel free to interject any time throughout the presentation. Questions are more than welcome and expected, so I look forward to hearing those. So welcome everyone to Walking in Someone Else's Shoes, the True Impact of Digital Accessibility. So I'm going to introduce myself, but before I do, I want to,
exactly. So,
oh, are we good?
Yeah, I took care of it. Thanks, Chris.
Okay, all right, no problem. So as I get ready to introduce myself, I would like for everyone to, if you're willing, to introduce yourself through the chat. And I've added some questions there to kind of give you a little piece to introduce yourself, where you're from, what your role is, how would you rate your knowledge of accessibility, kind of like beginner, intermediate, advanced, that type thing. And then what burning questions do you have? So hopefully we can come to some of those burning questions throughout this session. I do hope to leave time at the end so that we can answer some of those. And I hope to have questions throughout the presentation so that we can talk about those as well. But as Kathy mentioned, I am Dr. Chris Smith. I'm an instructional designer with North Carolina Virtual School. We are the second largest K-12 virtual school in the country. We serve on average each year about 50 to 60,000 students. That's not unique enrollments. I've been in this role since 2017, and I've been in education in North Carolina this is my 20th year. So I want to do a little bit more detailed introduction of myself to kind of explain how I got there and why I'm giving this presentation today. I started out as a kindergarten teacher in 2001. Spent 6 years in K-12 classroom, went on to be a district level instructional technology specialist for 6 years. And then in 2012, I left the classroom to go be the director of distance education at a local community college in North Carolina. And it just so happened that that institution backed up and shared property with the Eastern North Carolina School for the Deaf. So we had a very unique population because there were several students that cross-enrolled between the two institutions. So that's where I got my introduction into accessibility, and it kind of took off from there. The North Carolina Community College system has been highly involved with accessibility going back to around that same time of around 2012 to 2013. And since then, I've gone on I did that for about 5 years before I came back to K-12 with NC Virtual. And now with NC Virtual, I get to, among different things, travel the state and go into schools, of course, not since March when this happened, but go into schools and work directly with students, among other things, to kind of see where they are and what their problems are and how we can fix those. So some of those adventures have included going into the Governor Moorhead School for the Blind and working with a cohort of Spanish students in a Spanish 1 course, and we'll see more of that throughout the presentation. So that's kind of how we got here. Now I'm going to go through an experiment. For this next slide, what I would like you to do is bear with me for a minute because I'd like you to close your eyes. If you would, just kind of close your eyes and listen to the content of this next slide. So if your eyes are closed, I'm going to go ahead and click play. And then I want you to open your eyes now. Hopefully you did that. Did anyone hear anything? If I asked you the question, uh, could you tell me what NC Virtual believes? What would be your answer?
Chris,
And
were
this
we
was
supposed to hear anything?
no, this was intentional, by the
Okay,
way.
thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, just
Yeah.
wanted to check. Thank you.
So a lot of it now, I hope when I get to the real one that'll work. What should have actually played, there should have been some music playing. But the reason why I ask you to close your eyes is because I wanted you to, this title is called, the title of this presentation is called Walking in Someone Else's Shoes. So we're going to talk later in the presentation about different concepts related to video captions, into audio descriptions and different things. And so when we get to that point, I'll talk more about it, but I wanted you to kind of experience that. Imagine if you were sitting in a course and you were a visually impaired student, and all of a sudden you were asking your students to view a presentation that you pre-recorded or something, and it didn't have any narration to it. And then all of a sudden you came out and you said, you know, I need, here's a quiz on this, or you need to tell me what was in this video. So we're going to talk about how we can, you know, I wanted to start you out in someone else's shoes, and now we're going to talk about how we can make that experience better for everyone. So as we move on, we're going to talk about two different pieces. We're going to talk about the legal requirements, and we're going to talk about the human aspect. And so I want to start briefly. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on the legal requirements because that's not where I want to go with this presentation. I really want to talk about the human aspect and where it gets us and what we do with that. So when we talk about legal requirements, the first I'm going to talk about is Section 508. And Section 508, to sum it up for you, it's mostly about federal and government agencies. And it just basically says that we must give employees with disabilities and member of the public access to information that is comparable to access that is available to others. So if we're talking public K-12 schools or state institutions, a lot of those fall somewhere underneath of state government in some aspect, which then falls under federal government. And so when it comes to your school website and public facing information, that is required to be accessible. But the one that I want to talk about more is on the next slide, which is probably what most people are familiar with. And that's the Americans with Disabilities Act, or ADA. And so ADA guarantees rights and protects persons with disabilities from being discriminated against for employment, state and local government services, public accommodations, commercial facilities, and transportation. So with this, that includes captions, audio descriptions for videos, and alternative text for images. It also includes if you go to the movie theater, which hopefully we'll eventually get the opportunity to do again sometime soon, go to the movie theater and watch a movie. That falls into this category of ADA. If you go to a big city and you go to cross a busy street and you push the button so that you get the walk signal and you hear audio counting down from 10 and you hear it speaking to you, telling you like what street you're on and all, you'll start to see more and more of these features, even down to the sidewalk where you see the bubbled concrete. Those are all aspects of Americans with Disabilities Act. It goes to not just digital content, but construction and how things are configured and everything. So basically, it's giving access to everyone that may need some kind of assistance in different way. And we're going to talk about that. But where we're going to spend our focus on this entire presentation is the human aspect. And at this point in time in the presentation, I do have to give a couple disclaimers. So the scenarios that you're going to see on the next 4 slides are totally made up. That means the names of the individuals are made up. These are stock images, so they do not represent specific individual people. They come from Creative Commons images, so they're available to anyone to use. And so, but the scenarios in which they're based on are very realistic. And these are for students that you may meet in your seated, blended, or online courses. So we're going to meet these 4 individuals on the next few slides. So we're going to start out with Micah. Micah is considered legally blind due to a childhood illness. He struggles to view text that is too small or that uses color to emphasize different information, and he relies on screen reading technology to navigate online courses. Um, so you see Micah there. We're going to move on to an introduction to Courtney. Courtney was born with a degenerative hearing disorder that left her deaf as a young child. She does communicate through sign language, but prefers the use of captions and transcripts over the use of an interpreter when navigating online courses. Next, we have Jeremy. Jeremy was born with cerebral palsy. He has very minimal muscular movement of his hands and fingers, which means he is unable to operate a standard keyboard. Uses speech-operated software to interact and control his computer. We're going to learn more about someone like Jeremy in just a minute. And then finally, we have Gabriella. She was involved in a car accident in middle school, which left her with a permanent brain injury. She needs to have information broken into chunks and can handle video that are limited to about 10 minutes or less. So while I did say these 4 individuals are made up, I did say the scenarios are real. I have actually not the actual situation which put the 4 individuals into these categories, but I have worked with different students in each of these 4 categories. And so once we have that information, I'm now going to talk about how we can make the learning experience better for each of these 4 different individuals and how we can also use that to meet General Standard 8 accessibility and usability in the Quality Matters rubric. Before I do, I'd meant to mention in the beginning, I am going to give you a link. I'll drop it in the chat in the end where you will have access to this presentation. I've created a whole resource page that you'll have access to where I also have a learning object that you can use for personal use or you can use for professional development at your own institution. It actually goes into a little bit more with Gabriella and all 4 of these individuals I'm talking about, because when I talk about each of the next few pieces, it then actually gives some information on how that particular aspect would impact or affect each one of these individuals. So we're going to get into our real goal here. And our real goal with all that we're going to talk about today is our goal is to promote independence. And so while there are legal implications associated with digital accessibility that we must adhere to, our main goal is to design our course content to promote the ability to interact with the course independently. And so I'm going to use a video example to show this independence in just a minute, but I have to give a backstory and describe what you're going to see in the next video. And so I'm actually going to go ahead and take my headphones off because I'll need the audio. So that you'll be able to hear what's going on in this video. So in the image on the right, I want to describe what you'll see in the video. At the top is an iPad, and you'll notice that most of the screen is dark with just a little bit of light. That is because anyone with different level of visual impairment, a lot of white light really hurts the eyes. So what they do is they use a setting called invert colors. So the colors have been inverted so that white turns to black and black turns to white. So all the text is in white and the background's in black. The device below is a Bluetooth Braille keyboard. It operates through Bluetooth technology. And so the screen reading technology is turned on the iPad. It then sends that information to the device. It's controlled with joystick controllers like you see on the right. And then across the bottom, you see a variety of dots. And what happens is the screen reader reads through that content on that page. Those dots automatically pop up to create Braille at the bottom. So it's basically real time converting the text into audio and Braille at the same time so the student can interact with it and navigate it using the controls on the device. And then what's really hard to see is the edge of the table, and underneath on the student's lap is an actual paper Braille version of the key terms and definitions. The student is in Spanish 1. This is at that Governor Moorhead School, the School for the Blind in North Carolina. There was a cohort of their students a couple years ago that took our Spanish 1 course. And so this student is independently on their own without help completing a quiz in that course. So I want to bring up the video example. And hopefully you should be able to hear it this time. But I want to play this for a second. Maybe.
Hey, Chris, I sent you a private note to tell you what you need to do for us to be able to hear. You actually have to stop sharing and share the actual video and then click. Now I have to scroll back to what I typed to you. If you look in that private thing, it'll tell you the steps on what you need to do. It's clunky.
Okay.
Do you see that message? You have to stop sharing, reshare, and be sure to click the check box at the bottom of the share screen to share computer audio. You want to give that a try? Let's see if that works.
Yeah, just 1 second. I'm used to all that being configured. Sorry. Let me
No
go on. I'll
problem.
come back to this because I don't want to lose time. So let me go back.
Absolutely.
And I'll
Thanks,
come back
Chris.
at the end and I'll share that video.
Thank you.
And so I'll need to do that again with what I want to do. So I want to get us to a point where I can do that. So here we go. Let me go back. And let's go through the presentation some more, and then I'll come back to that video. So with that, the next thing we're going to talk about is we're going to go into how we can make content accessible. And so with that being said, whoop, I got to share my screen again. Hold on. I think we should be back on track now. We good, Kathy?
Yes, you're good to go, Chris. Thanks.
Okay, sorry. So now we're going to get into what we can do to configure that and set it up properly. So we're going to talk about some technology considerations. If I have a visual impairment, the things that I need to worry about are screen readers, audio descriptions, and Braille displays like the one you just saw. If I have an auditory impairment, I worry about the considerations I have to think about are open, closed captions and transcripts. Muscular, speech to text and keyboard controls, and for cognitive, universal design for learning principles. Now, I am not going to turn this into a presentation about UDL. Basically, it's just the way that you set up your content, that there are multiple ways of accessing the content, that it's chunked and broken apart and easily, more easily understood. I'm not going to focus on that part because that's a whole different presentation, but I am going to focus on these top three: screen readers, closed captions, speech to text, and what needs to be configured in order to make all that work properly. I want to talk about the main areas of concern. We start out with the content delivery system, LMS, whatever you call it. That could be Canvas, Google Classroom, Seesaw, Moodle, Blackboard, D2L, whatever you use as an LMS. That is a first consideration. You also have to worry about your school websites and teacher web pages. Now that doesn't fit specifically into the Quality Matters aspect of it, but we're going to talk about accessibility in general. So I did want to bring up those few things. We talk about digital textbooks, software, and files. Those all do play a part in different aspects of the 8 general standards in the Quality Matters rubric. So when it comes to digital textbooks, you want to make sure that you check for, when you're deciding if you are responsible for deciding what textbook's going to be used, you want to check for the things that I'm about to talk about on the next few slides to ensure that what you are requiring your students to use is set up in a way that will allow them to be successful. Same thing with files and software. So let's talk about how we make content accessible for a little bit. So when we talk about making content accessible, we are going to first, you should not use color to emphasize text. If you're trying to emphasize something, you can use color at a minimum. But if you notice the slide that I have kind of in my background, there's hands all the way around that, and we use green and blue and red and orange and yellow and purple. And one of the things that I've heard a lot, especially now that I'm back in K-12 and working in a fully virtual school, is a lot of our teachers, when they create their teacher announcements, seem to think that adding a bunch of color to a teacher announcement makes it more engaging, but it actually distracts for multiple reasons. So you don't want to use color as a main way of emphasizing text. You want to use, if you do use color, and you can in some instances, you want to avoid using red and green together. But you want to use some other form of font style to emphasize those pieces other than just the color. So you would then use bold and italics. So one example I give of when you might use this is at NC Virtual, we teach a wide variety of world language courses. We have 4 levels of Mandarin, Japanese, Spanish, French, German, etc. And so a lot of those, you have different conversation pieces. And so you have one person talking to another. So you might set apart those different pieces or the conjugation parts using color. And that's fine as long as you minimize the different number, the amount of colors that are used. So maybe 1 or 2 colors max, and you use bold or italics also along with the color to emphasize. The other part is underlying is reserved for hyperlinks. And we'll talk more specifically about that on the next slide. Paragraph font as a minimum of 14, and you should use heading styles. So if you're not familiar with what heading styles are, whatever software you're working in, whether it's the Google Suite, the Microsoft Suite, iWork, or whatever the name for it now is called on an Apple machine, in those you have in your toolbar pre-built settings. So you can designate text as either a title, a header 1, header 2, header 3, and so forth. And by doing that, when you add those to the page, whether it be a document, a presentation, or content in the learning management system, what that does is it allows individuals who use keyboard controls only or screen reading technology the ability to navigate back and forth throughout that entire piece of content using the controls on the keyboard. It used to be that we set up a page, I went and centered my font, I added bold, I increased the size a little bit, and I work my way down the document like that. If I do that without using those pre-built styles, then that forces someone who uses those assistive technologies to actually go through the whole page without being able to navigate back and forth. So we're going to talk about underlining and hyperlinks. And this is where I will have to take just a minute to switch things so I hopefully can get the audio to work. But while I do, hopefully, maybe at this point in time, we may have a couple questions. So let's look at that piece for a minute. I want to stop sharing for just a minute.
And Chris, while you're doing that, I'm going to post in the chat about the R's because
Yes.
it'll answer a number of the questions that people have posted, and I've saved those questions that you probably won't have time to get to. So I'm just going to go ahead and put some information in the chat for everyone that should answer their questions. Sorry to interrupt you.
Oh, no, you're fine. And Kathy, I am not seeing the setting that's normally there to share audio.
Okay, so when you stop sharing and you actually pull up the video, right? So you're actually going to pull up and share the video, and then there should be a box. And I'll be honest with you, sometimes it depends on what version of Zoom that you're on, but the information I was provided when I asked was that you stop sharing, you reshare the video itself, and then there should be a prompt or a box where you click the checkbox at the bottom of the screen to share the computer audio.
Gotcha. Yep, we're good.
Okay, super. Okay, thanks so much.
Sorry about that. No problem.
Not at all.
So you should see on my screen the video ready to play. I want to go ahead and click play because it does take a minute to initialize. And so while it does, I want to pause it for just a second because I want to go back to the presentation to explain what we're going to do here. So one of the things that I see the most frequently, whether it's by email, whether it's on websites, whether it's wherever it is with digital content, is the tendency to add click here or here when there's a link. And so if I look at the two images on the left, we're used to, when we see blue text that's underlined, automatically recognizing that's a link. That's fine if you're a visual person. However, if we use things like click here to designate links all throughout the page, I want to talk about what that experience is like for a student on the other side who may use keyboard control only, who may use screen reading technology, etc. So those assistive technologies have tools built in so that the user can click certain controls to strip a page of nothing but the links so that they can access those links. And when it does, if I have 10 links on a page and all say click here, then I now have a list of 10 links and they all say click here, and I have no idea which is which. In screen reading technology, that's how it works. Now, if I am a person who, which you're going to see in this video, who relies on audio to control my computer because of muscular limitations, if I say open click here, all of a sudden, all 10 of those links are going to open in new tabs on my machine, and I'm going to have windows all over it, and I don't know which is which and what's going on. So the way to do it properly is you actually give the name of the document. So at the top, I created an example on the left that says, click here for a transcript of the lesson. So technically the way that it should be done so that it makes sense is you name the document when you create the link. So I put the lesson 1 transcript provides a time-coded detailed description, and I hyperlink the lesson 1 transcript. So that student could say, open the lesson 1 transcript, and that would open if they're using voice controls. So let's look at what it's like to use voice controls. Brian is going to go through, he is a student enrollment counselor at a community college in North Carolina. So let's meet Brian and look at this for a minute.
Hi, my name is Brian Eshelman. I'm an enrollment counselor here at Davidson County Community College, and I want to show how using Dragon dictation software allows me to be designated the communications guy at the school, and
it's working, Chris.
Potentially to answer emails faster than some of my typing colleagues. Wake up. Open data tell. Go to sleep. And there's actually you may not have been able to see it, there's an icon on my desktop called data tell, and so I trained it to do that. Wake up. Enter data tell user ID. Go to sleep. And you'll notice that it didn't type.
And I'm not going to play the whole video. Like I said, you will have access to the presentation, so you will have access to the link so that you can go through and see if you want to know more about how all that works. But Brian is able to, he has a bunch of pre-programmed codes in his machine. He uses a software called Dragon, naturally speaking, to control. So he tells it to wake up. When he tells it to wake up, that means the computer starts listening to him and acting out the actions that he gives it based on commands. He can go ahead and create like pre-designed emails. So they just says, add, this person, add this email, and it sticks in all the text and he's able to send it and everything. So that's one of the reasons why we need to focus on these text pieces and be intentional about how we create our hyperlinks. Next, I want to talk about alt text for images. And with alt text for images, instead of reading all this to you, I'm going to go to the example on the next page, because basically what alternative text or alt text is, if you're not familiar, is that when there is an image, if I have a visually impaired person, they're not going to be able to see or recognize the details of an image. There's a spectrum. They may be able to kind of pick out the different colors and notice that there's changes in colors, or they may not be able to see it all. And so adding alt text or alternative text is the way that we create the image so that it reads, the screen reading technology reads a description of that image to students. So anything that's non-text, that's not video, whether it's clip art, a digital picture, etc., would need to have alt text. Now, when I mentioned clip art, one of the things I got to add as a disclaimer to this slide is that the other piece of this in terms of design is that you really want to limit the use of images. Like, we live in a world now of memes and in a world of GIFs. And a lot of people think those are very cute and funny and different things like that. And I'm not saying there's not a place for those. There's a place for those in some instances, not necessarily the GIFs, but memes do have an instructional place in different courses and what we're teaching and so forth. But when you do that, you want to limit the use of those and make sure they tie directly into the instructional content that you're working with. Once you've ensured those two things, then we focus on alt text or alternative text. So I have 4 images on the screen. In the top left is a picture of Pythagoras. If you're a math person, you know who Pythagoras is, the Pythagorean theorem. One of the things that you don't do when you're creating alt text is you don't start out with picture of. The reason being is that it becomes redundant because the screen reading technology automatically already alerts the user that they have come upon an image. But the difference is with the 2 images on the left, the top and the bottom, are that they are specific types of pictures. So the one in the top left is a black and white sketch, while the one in the bottom left is a colored painting. So in both of these instances, if I need to, especially if I'm teaching some kind of art class, art history or something like that, I need to distinguish between those different types of mediums. So then I would say, you know, sketch of Pythagoras, black and white sketch of Pythagoras. And then for the bottom one, if you're not familiar with that image, it's George Washington crossing the Delaware. So I would say colorful painting of George Washington riding his horse crossing the Delaware. And so when I say painting of and sketch of, those are specific types of mediums where I need that in my description, in my alternative text, so that the student can distinguish between the 2 different types. Now, the one in the top right corner is a little bit more difficult to make sense of because it is hard to tell what it even really is. But basically, it's a decorative divider that you might find between content on a page. And so those are fine to use. In those instances, what you would do is you would, in the alt text box, you would just add open quotes. So you would put a quotation mark, space, another quotation mark. And what that does is that technology shows the screen reader that it is a decorative image and it skips over it entirely. So it doesn't try to read any details about it. And I can still use that for design. Same thing, if I'm adding a meme to my course and it's just kind of for pure decoration, sometimes I may need to create that as decorative, but usually because it's a meme, it has text embedded, and what's embedded in that text is important. So that would put it over in the category of the left where it would actually need specific alt text. Now, the one in the bottom right that I'm going to talk about for a minute is one that I hear about all the time. When we are creating math at all different levels, the goal would be to use an accessible math language like Math Excel or LaTeX or something like that. I know like most of the modern learning management systems have equation editors built into them. Canvas has an equation editor, Moodle has one as well. And when you use that tool and build it in, that makes that math problem, that equation, that function, accessible to screen reading technology. However, there are instances where the software does not have an equation editor. One that I work with all the time that does not is the Articulate suite. If you're not familiar with it, it's like Storyline and Rise, where you build interactive learning objects in course content. It does not. So when I go to create math activities in that software, I have to add those as an image. And when I do, I need alternative text for that image. And the very first thing I hear all the time is, there's no way, I can't do that because I'll give away the answer. And my response to that is that we have, as educators, for years and years, been giving read aloud support to meet IEP and 504 plan requirements in math and all other subject areas. So read aloud is basically the same concept you use when you're creating alternative text. So if I have the image in the bottom right-hand corner, the alternative text for that would be f of x equals 12 minus x squared. And so I would actually write out 12 with the word 12 minus, I wouldn't put the dash, I would write the word minus out, x, and then I would write out squared beside it. Or to the power of 2, however you teach that concept in your course. So that's alternative text. The next thing we're going to get to is embedded text on images. And so when you, again, in limiting the use of images, I talked about memes a little bit on the last slide, but I want to talk about them more here. That text that's embedded on that image cannot be read by screen reading technology. And so therefore, anything that's on the image, like the two you see on this slide, a student who uses or relies on a screen reader would not be able to access that content, would not be able to complete their coursework or gain the information you're trying to share. So to get them access to this content, what we want to do is, you can do this a number of different ways. This is my suggestion that takes the least amount of time, least amount of effort, and still gets by what we need. In the image on the top left, it's a comic strip. In a comic strip, one person speaks, another person speaks, or character, whichever items are in there. And so what I would do is I would create a separate document. We use Google, so I'd create a Google Doc, and I would put it, I would use kind of like I did when I taught 5th grade, we talked about readers theater. And so in that, it's just like a script for a play where you would have like boy says, girl says, boy says, girl says. And I would type it out, and I would say boy says, and I would type what they've said. And then girl says. I wouldn't have to put that information on the same page. All I would have to do is link to it above or below, preferably above the image, so that if there's anyone that reaches that image that needs that version, they can just click on it and have a text-based version enabled in order to interact with that content. Same thing happens with the chart, the pie chart that you see on the right. But there's a little bit more to talk about when it comes to the pie chart. Visually, we use the colors and the size of those colors to distinguish a lot of different things if we're a visual person. But if we're a visually impaired person, those things are not going to matter as much to us. What is going to matter the most are the details in terms of the key that goes along with the chart. So I don't need to focus on the colors. I don't need to know that Protestant's blue and that Hindu's red and that atheist is green. What I do need to know is that Protestant represents 51.3% of the population, Jewish represents 1.7% of the population, and so forth. So what I would do is I would, again, create a separate document and hyperlink to it. But in this document, what I would do at the top is I would label it religions around the world, or world religions, listed in order from greatest to least, which is this case, or if it were least to greatest, whatever they come in based on the key. And then I would just do a bulleted list: Protestant 51.3%, Roman Catholic 23.9%, and I would link to it above this document so that anyone needs that. And this goes to universal design for learning principles too. It's multiple ways of accessing the same content. And so that's what we do with embedded text. Now, creating accessible tables. This is one I like to date myself a little bit. I go way back to when I first started working in ed tech, which was when I was teaching in the elementary classroom around about 2002, 2003. At that point in time, I was asked to be the school webmaster. And so at that point, when I took over that position, we were using Microsoft Front Page to design our website and our web pages. And to do that, it didn't have all the modern tools that are available in a lot of content editing or web editing softwares now. So at the top, just like I have in the slide background, they wanted the school name and then like an image on the right and on the left, or the school logo on the right. In order to do that and make it configure properly on the page, I placed that in a table. And so design-wise, if I'm a visual person, it looked great. However, screen reading technology does not recognize the difference between a table for designed for visual appeal and a table for data. And so basically we want to reserve the use of tables for data, tabular data. You know, I use the example also to date myself. If you go way back to when you used to take a trip, we used to go to AAA and get what we called a trip ticket, and it came with an unfoldable map that you folded out all the way, and you had A, B, C, D, E, and so forth across the top in a grid pattern, and the numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, and so forth down the left side. You had those in terms of how you would find stuff. So you would match those up all the way across. So you want to make sure you use tables for a purpose. I want to pick things up now because I see what the time is, and so I don't want to run out of time. I do want to go back to the video that I talked about in the beginning. And so what happened was, if I have a video that has a speaking part, it has to have captions. If it doesn't have a speaking part, which is the video that was in the beginning, it just played audio. There was supposed to be some music you could hear, but you couldn't because at the time that wasn't configured. It has to have what are called audio narrations or descriptions. So if you think of like the narrator for a play setting the scene, that's what an audio description is. If I have a video that's just content with music playing and it's embedded text on it, then I have to have a narration for that video. So I have added a video, a version of that video on the next slide that I can play. At NC Virtual, we have strong beliefs about our students. We believe every child should have the best education regardless of their zip code. That starts with a great teacher.
Hey everyone, my name is Tiffany Grant and I teach math for NC Virtual.
And meaningful coursework. And now you should have been able to hear the music, but you should have heard that audio narration overlaid over top of that video. I want to jump to, like I said, I want to pick up the pace just a little bit, but I want to make sure that, because I want to make sure I give you the page to the resources that I've put together and have time to answer questions. So when it comes to creating accessible PDFs, there are actually two different types of PDFs. The first one are the ones that we create with our phones or our tablets, where it's become real easy. We add an app. I do this all the time if I have documents, especially when we're trying to do stuff virtually at a distance, whether it's close on a house, whether it's, make a deal of some kind or whatever, and I need to exchange documents, I just go to that app on my phone, take a picture of it, create a PDF of it, and send it. When I do that, that's essentially what it does. It creates a picture of that document. It embeds all that text in an image, and screen reading technology can't read it. So if you have access to dedicated scanners, they have special software that creates what's called a searchable or readable PDF, and that way that is more accessible. If I do things like, if I create a Google Doc and I export it from Google Docs as a PDF, it generally comes across accessible. If I've done everything in Google Docs I need to make it that way before, it does not come across as an image. Same thing with Microsoft Word. If I use their accessibility checker, I can go through that, export it, and it's fine. There is a tool that I want to talk about on the, and before I move forward, the last thing I want to say, the quick way to test a PDF to figure out which of the two categories it fits in is if you go to any text on that page and try to highlight it, whoops, and by trying to, I'm actually highlighting my screen, try to highlight it. If you can't and the whole thing wants to move, or it will not let you highlight any text, that PDF is an image and is not accessible. If you can highlight the text, then that PDF can be read by screen reading technology. So what are some tools that can help you? I'm not going to go into the details of these, but I'm going to talk about them real quick because of time. Copyfish, these are all three Google Chrome extensions. Copyfish is really awesome. So what it does is, say that, 2 years ago, I designed my course and I already have my content in there. And now I'm learning this information. And I have a bunch of old PowerPoint presentations that I created as PDFs. And I learned that those are images. And I think, oh no, in order to make those accessible, I've got to go retype and recreate all of those. No, Copyfish is a really cool, awesome Google extension if you've not used it. Basically, you can click on the link and go to it. when you do, you can install the extension, and what it will allow you to do is you can take a picture using the extension of content on the page, and it OCRs it. Basically, it converts it to plain text. Now, depending on the kind of text that's on the page, you may have to edit it just a little bit, but and it has to be in a website. It can't be I open a document on my screen and I try to do it through that document. I have to do it through Google Chrome, but I essentially take a picture of it, hit capture, and it converts it so I can just take that text and copy it to my clipboard and paste it somewhere. So I can recreate those other things. Canvas Quiz Printer and Tamper Monkey, you can install those, and what those will allow you to do is if you do work inside the Canvas learning management system, you can then use those to preview a quiz and create a printable version of it. So you can provide that for someone that might need a printable version of it in an alternative format. But where I really want to get to is, and I know I kind of rushed the end of this, is that there are very few IEPs or 504 plans that are the same between all kinds of different students. So every student has unique needs. This is a continuous process where we are constantly going to add additional supports. One of those most recently for us has been the printable quizzes and exams that we've been adding in our courses. So I put the steps where you can see that they start, but you can't see where they ever end because it is constantly moving. It is constantly changing. The link that I'm going to click on now is the one that I'll put in the chat. And I want to talk through what's on that page real quick. And then I do want to make sure we have a couple minutes to answer questions. So,
Hey, Chris.
Yes.
We're at 10 for 7, so
Yeah.
we're going to get bumped. So if you can be sure the links get in the chat.
Okay.
And
Yes.
they'll get the presentation with your links?
Yes. Give me just 1 second here.
Absolutely. And while you do that, just real quickly, I want to thank Chris for joining us today and for Carrie joining us to close captions. And just a reminder to complete the survey for the session and to be specific, measurable, constructive, balanced, and sensitive. Chris did such a great job. A lot of information, Chris.
I'm
Thank you
trying
for
to
the
get
links.
I'm trying to get the chat to pop up, but it's not. I've kind of lost it on my screen. Give me a second.
Yeah, it's hard to find when you're in presentation mode.
Let me stop sharing for a minute.
There you go. That'll help. Super. And I did look through the questions and most of them you answered, or I'm going to put this link in the chat one more time. That's the link to the R site where there's detailed information. Chris can confirm that, where a lot of this stuff can be explored. And the questions, since we won't have time for you to answer all those, but you did answer many of the questions that I found in the chat, Chris. I just wanted to let you know. Thank you.
All right, well, thank you. Exactly. So real quick, as we get ready to get kicked out, the link that I put in the chat at the top, the very first bullet is the presentation that I just went through. The second item is the course development training. It is that that you can use as a professional development opportunity that goes through. You can actually create, it's a lesson that you can walk through with people. If I go back, I have the Google extensions and how to get to those. And then I have some additional information, which the link to the Quality Matters page that talks about that AURS site is included in the top of those web resources, along with directions and tutorials on how to check Google Docs for accessibility, how to check Microsoft for accessibility, YouTube auto captions, which I didn't talk a lot about, but all the resources you would need are on that page. So sorry, it was kind of rushed at the end. I'm glad that I was able to answer questions. And I thought I had the page up, but there it is for everyone to see if you haven't clicked on the link, but all those resources are there.
We didn't get the link.
Okay, I know why. It's okay, hold on.
I copied and pasted it from me in there. I believe.
It should be there now. I just put it in again. Sorry, it went private to Kathy because I didn't check that setting first.
That's okay. I put it in there too, Chris. It just came from me, so they weren't sure.
Okay.
Thank you for that link. And thank you again, everyone. It's 10:50. We haven't gotten kicked out yet, but I have a feeling we will any minute. But since we haven't yet, if you want to go ahead and answer questions, maybe there is a break in between. I'm just going to check.
Okay. And I did put my email address in there too. If you have specific questions or want to know more, please feel free to reach out. I know it was kind of rushed with everything that we talked about. But I can tell you it definitely has an impact. When I sat down with that first Spanish course that I'm talking about, after 5 minutes of interacting with those students, I was ready to pick my technology devices up and throw them out the window, and I could see what I was looking at. So it is, I can tell you it's very frustrating, but there's some simple things that we can do that really don't take a whole lot of effort that make the learning experience better for students and also allow us to meet those standards, that standard 8, accessibility and usability for quality matters.
Okay, thank you again, Chris. I'm going to go ahead and say so long, farewell. Hope you continue to attend meetings this afternoon, and all take care of yourselves as you continue to work hard to keep education running online during the pandemic. Thanks again, everyone. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you all.